Anyway, so I'm Dr. Knutson. I'm Chuck. And so I'm an emeritus professor of BYU computer science, which means I quit and got some benefits and then let go one of my full-time jobs and kept doing all the other stuff. When I was at BYU, so I was there for 15 years on faculty, I founded the Internet Safety Project. That's now a nonprofit corporation that I'm chairman of. We have the largest wiki on the web on internet safety topics. And there's some resources. So if anybody's interested, internetsafetyproject.org. There's a podcast I have been neglectful of for the last couple of years, but I'm host of the Internet Safety Podcast. So the other thing that's kind of interesting and relevant is that I'm the father of 10 children. My wife is in here somewhere, so she's the heroic one. 4 of them are adopted, and I don't know if any of you have adopted kids. They seem to go off script a lot more readily. I don't know why. I know why. But so we've kind of, between all that, right, the professional experience and the personal experience, I don't know, it seems like we've been around the block, and so there's a lot of intrinsic motivation. And what I've noticed, I mentioned this morning, but what I've noticed is whenever there's a technology, these days, whenever anyone talks about pornography or they talk about any of the kind of evils that show up online, the first thing that they always do is they look for a technology guy. And if you were there this morning, you saw Kip singing about how he loves technology at his wedding, and from Napoleon Dynamite. And so, but, and I just want to reiterate this concept that the number one thing that my educational background in computer science does for me is I'm just not afraid of the technology. I mean, that's really it. It's not like there's a few things. There are a few little things that you understand a little bit more about certain things as a byproduct of that. But for the most part, it doesn't fundamentally tell you how to deal with a teenager going through the following situation. So the cobbler's children have no shoes, right? Sometimes that's the case. This, by the way, so this is a little bit of the evolution of technology. These are real phones. On the right, we see the Motorola cell phone circa 1984, about the time I was getting married. And we have the new smartphone circa 2015. Technology moves very, very quickly. I think we look back in this generation at 1984 or 85 and as really the dark ages. It's been a long, long time since then. In the history of humanity, 30 years has not typically been viewed as a really long time. But in this generation, it's a really, really long time. And one of the things I wanted to try to talk about a little bit in this one is I wanted to kind of rehash a little bit of the conventional wisdom, things that I remember. It was probably 15 years ago, the first time I ever started to see flyers coming home from school, right, about little internet safety things. The World Wide Web as a product, started about 1995. So it's only a 20-year-old. You realize that? The web, now the internet and the web are not synonymous. The internet started in the 70s. But the web as a product started in the really early 90s and became something everybody knew about by the mid-90s. 20 years. Think about the evolutionary growth in our world, what has happened, how dependent we are on that. If the entire internet went down today, there would be thousands of people per day dying, like literally losing their, I don't mean figuratively, which is more our topic here today. I mean literally dying because of things that have that kind of dependence on whatever. Everything runs on it. It's unprecedented in the history of humanity. And so some of the conventional wisdom just isn't as helpful anymore. And the problem is these are the people that are given the feedback, right, to the youth. This lady, this is a meme. This lady is a meme. Can you read that right? Take those photos of me off your Facebook. People can use it to get into my bank account. These are the people giving the advice sometimes, and it's not working out. This, by the way, if you're interested, is a meme that's titled "Grandma Discovers the Internet." That's the name of this meme, and then you can put whatever text you want onto that. And this one existed. So anyway, Grandma Discovers the Internet. Some of the conventional wisdom isn't that helpful, I think. And I don't know that it's wrong. The problem is that it's not multidimensional enough. It hasn't evolved with the times. Here's a handful. And if you have any that you want to throw out, please raise your hand and throw them out. How about, pornography is bad. That's still true. You just need to stay away from it, right? Just stay away from it. Avoid it like the plague. Stay away from it. Okay, cool, great, yes. Boy, that would really be handy. When it's in the air you breathe, That's hard, right? When it is coming at you from a lot of different angles, that's really, really hard. How about this one? And Ed Smart talked a little bit about this morning in the keynote, but there's kind of a stranger danger, right? I'm chatting online, there's somebody there, they pretend to be somebody they're not, they're actually, a 50-year-old that is a sexual predator. That happens, that absolutely happens. But what's interesting is that the percentage of times in which that's the case, the thing is that when that happens, it's some of the most heinous, right? Those are the kidnappings, the Amber Alerts. There aren't that many Amber Alerts, really, okay? They happen, but there aren't that many. It's in the smaller digits. The most common, and this is not in any way to undermine anything about that danger, right? That does exist, the stranger danger, and the very poignant stories that were told by Ed and Elizabeth this morning. But that's just not the common case. The common case of sexual predation is either two teenagers or a teenager, typically a girl, but not necessarily, and a boy who's a young adult, 18, 19, young 20s, who have an online relationship, and when they leave together, she knows that this is a 25-year-old guy, or she knows what it is, who it is, and that they're going to run away together, and that they're going to have sex. And in other words, the common case is it's completely consensual to the extent that a minor can be consenting. Legally, they can't be consenting within certain parameters, right? You understand what I'm saying? But the sort of the very simplistic stranger danger, not quite so helpful anymore, if that makes sense. What's happening is a lot of other kinds of emotional damage that's happening. Pornography is a big part of it, a very big part of it. It's not exclusively the issue. Here's another one that I think the conventional wisdom, and we said these 5-10 things, and then we called it good, and we thought we were great parents 15 years ago. Computers in a public place. Yes, absolutely, certainly. That doesn't mean you're done. Similarly with filters, I talked about that this morning. Filters on the machines, yes, absolutely. But you just can't say, well, the computer's in the kitchen, it's got a filter on it. We're home free. I guess we can just stop being parents at this point. That happens. It's crazy. No computers in a child's bedroom. Great, until you get to the point where you recognize that this is the computer, right? And it's actually in the back pocket or the backpack, right? So some of the conventional wisdom it's a little tough. Here's another one. Parents should know the kid's email account, right? You should be able to have access in to see what they're doing with their email and that kind of thing, right? How hard is it to get an email account? Or 20 by 3 o'clock today, right? Not hard at all. Most teens have multiple email accounts. How many of you have multiple email accounts? Yeah, most of us have multiple email accounts. And we're for the most part, benign about why we're doing that. The kids, you want a new account? Mom and dad said you can't do thus and such. They're tracking your email. Hey, not a problem. Go get another one. Go make a new Facebook account. Go make a new chat account. Go make a new Snapchat. Spread that around your own private network within a network. The friends that you have that are willing to keep your separate identity secret, like siblings and cousins and friends at school, right? They have these little secret combinations and such that help them to do what they do. That's sort of, I think, I want to just start with the notion that all these bits of advice are all still true, but if we just rest on that, we haven't moved forward. We haven't brought forward. And what I'm going to try to do is just a little bit later on, when we start talking about some of the social media apps, to just scare the willies out of you, just out of principle. And we don't have time. We don't have time to get into everything, but hopefully maybe a few notes, and you can go look stuff up and jump online and do some other homework, right? Mostly some teasers. Here's an interesting thing, though. I think one of the most, we're going to talk a bit about relationship. This really does come down to relationship at the end of the day. It really does. It comes down to personal agency, personal control. It really does. You can't technologize your way out of this. You can't externally control your way out of this. And I think we all understand that. But here's some really super ancient wisdom that I think is really worthwhile. This was first told to me by Lori Getz, who's an internet safety advocate and expert. And again, it's not new, but I first heard it from Lori, so I want to give proper attribution. When I was a kid, when you left the house, your parents had some questions for you, right? Like, where are you going? Who are you going to go with? What are you going to be doing? When will you be back? What are you going to wear? Right? I mean, what's the modern equivalent of that? I mean, do we think, if you look at every single one of those basic things that were good advice in the 70s when I was a teenager, they're really still good advice right now. Who are you with? What are you doing? What are you wearing? When are you going to be back? These are really, really great advice still. And I think that somewhere along the line, it feels like we just lost common sense a lot, right? You know, when I taught Education Week classes, and I have a mom who says my child is playing World of Warcraft 16 hours a day, and she was looking for a technological solution to that, right? There was one time that happened, and I said, well, she's like, well, how do I keep him off the computer? I said, well, there's probably like there's like an admin account on the computer. You can set up admin, rights, and then you can set up passwords and stuff. I said, is there an admin? She goes, oh yeah, he's the admin. I'm just like, you are so hosed. You're just so hosed. And I'm down to the point of like maybe a pine box with a padlock. I don't know, right? But the point is that these are not the fundamental solutions to the problems, right? The technological control issues ultimately aren't going to carry the day, but we still need to understand what they are. Here's a couple of thoughts some quotes to maybe get you thinking. This is from a book by Clay Shirky, one of my favorite authors in this space, called Here Comes Everybody. He said this: communications tools don't get socially interesting until they get technologically boring. In other words, when you constantly think about the technology as technology, it hasn't yet penetrated into your society. It's when it's just part of the local native language that's spoken that it begins to become socially interesting. Here's an example. Have you ever heard this expression? With the click of a mouse, you can dun dun dun. You've all heard this, right? With the click of a mouse. Okay, let me tell you something. The teenagers never, ever, ever say with the tap of my phone, I can. They never say it, right? How many of you say, with the turn of a key, I can be transported in just minutes to the store via my automobile, my horseless carriage? Nobody says this. They say, hey, Tad, could you run to the store real quick? We're out of bread, right? It's technologically not interesting, and therefore it begins to be socially impactful, right? So I cringe every time I ever hear anybody, an ad or a promotional thing, with the click of a mouse. And as soon as you hear that, you just know, non-native technology speaker, speaking with that accent again. I can tell your native country of origin. It is the 50s, right? You are not a native in this generation, okay? Here's another one, Clay Shirky, same book. It's a little harder, a little denser, but there's a lot of cool meaning here. The centrality of group effort to human life. Let me just break that down. So the centrality of group effort to human life. He's saying that our social efforts, our social structures are an inherent part of what it means to be human, okay? Society and group function is essential to our humanity, okay? So the centrality of group effort to human life means that anything that changes the way groups function will have profound ramifications for everything from commerce and government to media and religion. I don't think you missed anything. Sports, I guess, I don't know. It's pretty much all there, right? So what it means is that anything that changes the way social structure can be engaged and functions is going to have profound impact on everything involved in our society. Okay? So can we say internet? Can we say everything in the world technologically right now kind of is falling into that category? And again, later on, I'll talk a bit about some of the social implications, some of the apps in this kind of post-Facebook generation. So it's a couple of thoughts. I was in a training meeting that I was asked to come do it was an LDS thing, I don't remember what it was. Talking to the High Council, talking to a bunch of bishops, something. But there was a point where one of the individuals there, he made an interesting statement. It's haunted me ever since. He said, well, I'm on Facebook, but only to check up on what they're doing. Doesn't bother anybody but me? And I actually said, me being me, I just said, so let me ask you something. Do you go to their ball games when they got a ball game, got a soccer game? Do you know, like, I'll go to their baseball game, but only to see what they're doing there. You know, do you say that? You know, non-native speaker alert. You know, and what's the insinuation? Well, I'm on Facebook, but you know, before you judge me for doing that evil thing, it's only because this thing, right? And I said in that meeting, I said, how about being on Facebook because that's where they are? How about being on Facebook to connect with them, to be with them, to share with them, to like their prom photos, or to like something that one of their friends did, or right? That's where they are. That's where they're engaging. I've on occasion proposed that we take it to a limit, to an extreme. You know, if your kid's on World of Warcraft, you should probably join their guild. So then I have this, in my mind, there's this moment, right, where it's like, Dad, what are you doing in my guild? You're embarrassing me in front of the Blood Elves. So, I mean, I don't know, it's a little strange. I don't recommend that. I don't know, maybe. But I'm just saying, you know, now here's the interesting thing. The phenomenon that's really interesting is one of the reasons we're going to talk about this sort of social networking diaspora, the spread off of Facebook and everywhere else. Let me talk about that for a second, because that's what's begun to happen. This was our world of just a few years ago. Now, if you're really, really attentive on the bottom, you will see that the white-haired fella is actually me. This was a photo spontaneously taken on Thanksgiving about a year or so ago. Yeah, it's my son-in-law, my daughter Sarah, my wife who's out here somewhere.
Someone looked up on their phone.
Yeah, somebody walked in. I think they felt jealousy. I think they were feeling left out, a little jealous. But that's an actual, yeah. All right, hon? That's pretty much Thanksgiving after the meal at our house, right? And you know, notice the proliferation of Apple devices. It's whatever. It's just part of our DNA, I guess. This was our world, the modern family, right? We are a Facebook family, and there was a point. I think there's been a nice little stretch here. Some of the salad days of social networking. If you were just on Facebook with your kids, then you're probably covered. You're doing a really good job of being an online parent, right? And then here's what began to happen. These are real, by the way. Can you read this? This is Grandma posting on Facebook. Hi, Jennifer. Grampy will be glad to see. This is publicly posted on their timeline for the world to see. Grampy will be glad to see you whenever you go. You look like your mother when she was your age. Get some of that Proactive to get rid of those pimples on your face. You're a pretty girl and you will look so much better. Love you, Gram. If you're 15, where are you going to go? Somewhere else, right? So this happened. There's this one. Again, this is Grandma. Can you read that in the back? Grandma posts, Facebook, please put pictures from Christmas on here. Mike goes, Grandma, what are you talking about? Grandma says, I'm trying to put the pictures from Christmas on the Facebook, but it won't work. Mike, lol, yeah, LOL, right? Were you trying to command it like a robot? Grandma, your grandfather told me to try it. So rough. So rough. And then, this is what the children are going through, right? This is your worst nightmare when you're 15, and then this happened. That's what happened next, is this. And then the children, this is a little Monty Python on the Holy Grail. It's always a good presentation if you can work that in somehow. But, and then this began to happen. And so there was a point where for the teens, they want to have their little protected world. They want their little enclave. They want their little teen thing. They had that with MySpace. They did. But MySpace was really, it was the skanky trailer park of the internet, pretty much. And everybody, even the kids knew that eventually. And Facebook was the kind of cool, hot place. At first, you had to have a university email address to get a Facebook account. Remember that? You had to have a university email address to get a Facebook account. That was after it spread off Harvard to Boston area and began to grow. And then sooner or later, it just gets overrun by the grandparents. And then here's what happens. Now, and I'm a big advocate of grandma, being there, but it's a little hard sometimes. So this then as of, just this kind of in the last year, these are the fastest growing social media and messaging apps. There was a time when it was pretty much just kind of Facebook. There was a point I remember trying to chat with my daughter on like MSN Messenger or something like that. This is my adult daughter who now has given me 2 grandchildren, so she's up on the list. And she said, I never see you on chat anymore. And she goes, I pretty much only chat on Facebook. That was like 5 years ago. That was like, I pretty much only do chat on Facebook. And then that began to evolve. It's a little bit fine print, and we'll walk through actually most of these. But you see Snapchat, Pinterest, Instagram, Line, WhatsApp, Vine, Viber, Google+, Kik Messenger. The note is important that you do see Facebook Messenger, right? Isn't that kind of a contrary to what I was just saying? But everybody's leaving Facebook. Well, Facebook Messenger was actually a required application to install. Some of you went through this, like, why do I have to install Messenger? So that growth of Messenger was imposed by Facebook on the user base of Facebook. So it's a little bit deceptive. But if you look at that, you've got this massive growth with Snap. Every one of these is growing. You see that 30% growth across a dozen different apps. That's kind of the world. They're all going. These kids are kind of like multilingual when it comes to social media and messaging apps. They have a lot of different things. They'll jump on something like Instagram, which has a more public thing, and they'll say, Kik me at, and then there'll be their Kik thing, or Snapchat me, and they're basically, it's like a web of social media, where the social media itself involves a web of different kinds of network of friends and associates. It's just gotten way more complex. And in their little world, they're just trying to stay one step ahead of us. They're just trying to continually trick us. So what I want to do right now is, and I want to double check as well, what's my hard stop time? Somebody have that on their little program? I should know this. 2:45? 2:45, okay, good. I've still got 45 minutes. So I'm only going to spend a minute or two on each one of these. But I wanted to just walk through each of the, it's still not a complete list. There's about 20 or so that I want to talk about that I think you ought to at least have heard about and just know something about. One of the things that it does is if you're looking at your kid's phone or you're looking at the iPod Touch or looking at the apps that they've got loaded, if they're smart, you're hosed anyway, you won't be able to see it, but that's another issue for another day. But most kids are not that protective because they don't think you're that on top of it. So they'll do a lot of lazy things because they just don't trust that you're going to be any real problem. And they're mostly right? But what it means is that if you get on there and start looking through and just look at the apps that are installed, there's a little bit of a like, oh, I remember that one, and Chuck said that one thing, and I'll do a little more research now and think about what's the impact potentially on my child. Some of these are fairly benign. Some of these are really not benign at all. And so I kind of want to walk through it. The first thing I'll do, this is kind of the little, this is the kind of the constellation, if you will, of what I want to talk about. There are apps that are dealing with texting. I mean, it used to be we just text, right? That's on your phone. Now texting has gone to a new level. We have microblogging. Twitter's kind of the poster child of that. Dating and meeting. A lot of stuff going on there, including kids, young adults, very prevalent. We'll talk a little bit about those. Photo and video sharing, self-destructing. And the self-destructing refers to the message, not the child. If the child is self-destruction, that's coincidental, but not what that label is about, okay? And that kind of anonymous message sharing. It used to be, 10 years ago, there were video sharing websites, right? But I'm talking about video sharing as a fundamental premise for social interaction. See what I mean? It's not like I've got my online photo album and I'm putting them there and you can see them and other people can go to others and see pornography and sexually explicit images and things. All that's still true and out there. I'm talking about things like Instagram, where when I post a message, I am making a social statement to a specific group of people. And I am doing it in order to obtain their interaction with me in that social kind of way. These kids are hypersocial, they're hypersexualized, but they're also hypersocialized. And this technology is kind of really feeding that. And I think it also feeds a lot of this. I think kids want to be loved and they want to be valued and they want to be appreciated. Sometimes they don't get that from us. We're like, clean your room and wipe that look off your face and stop hitting your brother. And, we're that sometimes. And they go out and you're so pretty and you're amazing and you're so beautiful. And some of that's sincere and innocent. Some of that's very insincere and not innocent, of course. And the fact that it happened doesn't by itself say which it is. Let me kind of walk through these really briefly, and then I'll dive into each one individually. I want to kind of end talking a little bit more about some parenting things in this technology generation. These are some of the texting apps. We'll talk about each one of these. Essentially, these are replacements for what you do on your phone right now when you simply text. So they're now not just texting each other, they're kicking each other. Okay? I was sharing with my wife the other day, it was Gary Goldman, a very funny comedian, who was talking about people calling me on my phone. Like, what are you calling me on? How dare you call me on my phone? You need to text me, then I will text you back to tell you about my availability in a window in which you might attempt to call later on. He says the phone is an app, a seldom used app on my phone. And there's all this other stuff. That's the world we've come to. I'm that way. People come in, what do you call me? Text me. I don't have time for your call. You're going to interrupt my flow when I can just disinterestedly multitask and handle you. But anyway, that's texting. It's a new generation. Photos, video sharing. You've pretty much all heard of Snapchat. You've probably all heard of Snapchat, right? How many of you have heard of Snapchat? I bet a majority of you, maybe not a majority. Instagram, I'm sure. Yeah, you're all academic. You're like, he's not actually counting. Vine, how many of you have heard of Vine? Yeah, I think we're less than half, all the way across here. Tap Talk, much newer, NGAG. These are basically, again, this is not just about sharing my photos. This is about interacting with a social network of people about the photos and videos. Microblogging, Twitter, you've all heard about Twitter, probably. But Instagram, there's also a lot of overlap, hence the Venn diagram from earlier. Instagram, Tumblr. We'll talk about each one of these in greater detail, but the idea is kind of the update. I've been tweeting about the conference today. Anybody seen my tweets? Yeah, thank you. Me and him. I'll follow you on Twitter. You already did? Wait, what's your name?
Ryan.
Did I follow you back already?
No.
Slacker. Okay, I will, I promise.
Yeah, you were talking.
I was in the middle of talking when he did that. Okay. Fair enough. Okay, all is forgiven. We can still be tight friends on the internet. We can bridge this distance with technology. The anonymous, self-destructing ones. The biggest one that people have heard of is Snapchat. There's some others. Secret, Whisper, Yik Yak. Great names. These are basically provide the ability to send a message of some form, whether that's text, video, image, some combination, and then have those basically be deleted and expunged. You can watch it while on Snapchat, a little clock will wind down, and then it'll be deleted and you can't get it back. You can screen grab it all you want in that 10 seconds. So there's no, some of the kids feel like, oh, this is safe because it goes away. You can always grab it. Some of the most pernicious stuff is over here in the dating and meeting stuff. We'll talk about each one of these in, again, fairly brief just because of time, maybe a minute or so. Okay, let's kind of dive in. Kik, this is very, very popular. This is free. Photos, sketches, webpage links. The teens love Kik. Kik is very, very popular with teens. There's 120 million users and none of us. Okay, the 120 million are pretty much all teens. If you look at all the social media apps for what they refer to as user engagement, which is kind of time per session spent, Kik leads everything in the 14 to 20-year-old demographic, okay, in terms of the time that they spend in this category of chatting stuff. They interestingly, it was created by college students. They popularized it using Twitter. It's pretty popular with sexual predators and pedophiles soliciting child porn. There are no parental controls on the system at all. And the popular expression is you'll be on Twitter or Instagram or some other more public kind of a setting, and you'll say, kick me at, K-I-K, kick me at, and then here's your little thing. Now you've got essentially, almost like a private chat room. We would have called it a chat room back in the day, but it's very much like that. It's a private chat environment. Now I've got this private opportunity to go make friends with a perfect stranger. Kik has there's so much volume and so many kids that there's quite a bit that's innocent, but it has a fairly bad reputation, not a great reputation for Kik. But on the other hand, it is the most popular. That's a tough line, right? If you got an app or something that you pretty much know is really bad, and you have no business being on this thing, that's a little hard to sell your kid on. When everybody else is doing that thing, that's hard. But that's kind of the position that Kik's in.
Wait, so what do we do? What do we do? You're scared?
I told you I was going to scare you.
What do we do now?
Go do some homework. Go online. Start looking around. Look at the Internet Safety Project. Look at Common Sense Media has some great resources. I don't know if do they have a booth out here? I think they've been here in the past, but Common Sense Media is a really great resource that I like a lot for that. For these social apps, there are plenty of articles, and I do appreciate you asking the question because we can't stop and break it down because we don't have all day long to really dive into every one of these, right? But if you look, there are plenty of articles written by people with parental concerns and ideas, and you can get a pretty good feel with a little bit of online research. That's what I'm going to do for now with that. Sorry. You're welcome. WhatsApp, very high brand right now. WhatsApp is subscription based. You actually have to pay for it. It's not a lot. It's like, I don't know, $1 a month, $1 every 6 months or something like that. It's not a lot. It's cross-platform. You can send video, text, and audio. You can do group messaging with WhatsApp, and that creates. The part about where you don't put if you get two boys and they're both 16, you get them in a car, the IQ drops. You know what I mean, by 50%. If you get 3, it drops to 0. There's that. There's a little of that as well when you get into group chats, right? Because suddenly the group dynamics there's just more variables. Sometimes the collective IQ drops considerably. You're supposed to be 16 years old or older to use it. Most of these don't have a lot of real protection or ways. Verifying actual age is very hard, technically. It is. That's why you carry a passport when you're traveling and things like that, because they've gone through some effort. There are about a little less than 500 million users of WhatsApp right now, 420 million users of this thing, and they are almost all teenagers and young adults. Facebook purchased WhatsApp actually for $20 billion. Let's see. WhatsApp does not have a particularly bad reputation. In my scouting around, I don't see WhatsApp as being something that's woo, don't go there. It has a decent, much like Facebook has I think a fairly benign reputation. You can get stuff, but not that much stuff on Facebook. It's a pretty tame environment. And that, by the way, it typically has to do with the intentions of the developers and the creators and the founders of the companies. Some of them, they are trying to let you hook up with somebody else sexually in a one-night stand. That's their goal. It's why they built their app. Others, there's a real deliberate motivation to create a more wholesome environment. You see that in the intention of the company. So a little bit of homework. Uvu is free. It's basically video chat is the biggest thing that it's got. It's got 75 million users. It is the top video conference app for users under 25. So this is like live. You can do FaceTime on your iPhone, or you can do Google Hangout or Skype, right? This is the kind of video chat idea. So for the under 25 crowd, this is the top video conferencing. Nothing could possibly go wrong if young adults and teenagers are video conferencing with strangers on their phones. Interestingly, again, not a particularly bad reputation. It doesn't jump off the charts as saying, so understand when I say that, the fundamental notion that you want your 15-year-old to be on this, I would say probably not, but that's separate from within the sphere of what it's trying to be, what's its reputation. Does that make sense? So I'm not saying it's great reputation, every preteen should be on this thing, not what I'm saying. For whatever reason, it tends to appeal to women more than men. I don't know what to make of that exactly, but that's Uvu. Twitter is pretty well known. I think, how many of you know about Twitter? Know a fair amount about Twitter? How many of you have Twitter accounts? Yeah, one of the reputations that Twitter acquired among the youth was that it was basically where all the adults were, that it was for people my age. Twitter had this kind of like, not quite as business-like as LinkedIn, but a lot of adults, putting forward kind of a professional-ish kind of persona, which is largely true. That turns out to not be so interesting to the teens. Because again, they don't want to have a rave with a bunch of adults standing around, watching, criticizing, looking down their nose at them while they do really stupid things. One interesting thing about Twitter, and I missed this somewhere in the process, but Twitter, apart from the picture you can pick as your little icon, you can pick a little icon picture, apart from that picture, and the banner stuff you have on your main page, apart from those, which are not supposed to contain any nudity or explicit sexual content, apart from that, there are literally no guidelines on Twitter about sexual content. No parental settings, and also I've discovered that certain filtering software, for whatever reason, doesn't necessarily handle Twitter very well, and I don't know why, but I've seen that as well, much to my chagrin. But a little bit of a shocker, because I mean, Twitter has a sort of a mainstream reputation, but there's very, very little in terms of real parental control to try to help there. Weird mixed bag, honestly. Twitter is a bit of a frontier. On the one hand, I use it heavily. A lot of people with great reputation in their lives and professions use it, and then there's this other thing. So I don't know what, you have to kind of get your head around that. All still scary, right? This is just just enough education to get you into the Google search to find a little more about this. Tumblr. By the way, you'll also notice that dropping the E on some of these seems to be the cool thing to do. Not Twitter, of course, but Tumblr and Flickr, and there's a bunch. Tumblr is similar to Twitter, microblogging. You can put all kinds of stuff, post it. You can text, photos, quotes, etc. There's 225 million blogs on Tumblr. That's that's essentially somebody's feed, somebody's place where they put their content that you can go look at. Gosh, what else? There are no content restrictions again, like Twitter. You can post and find pornographic content quite easily on Tumblr. There is a safe mode that you can hide blogs that are marked as having adult content. The problem with most of these sites, like Flickr is another example, and apps where you can say, well, I don't want to see anything that's adult content. Typically, it's self-police. So somebody has to mark their own blog as being adult. And most people that are posting that kind of stuff will do that, but not everybody. So when you're in a self-policing kind of a world, that's a little bit more problematic. There's definitely a raunchy reputation for Tumblr. And kids are flocking to Tumblr because their parents aren't there. Again, I don't know what you do with that. Do you go there? I'm not so sure. But information, hopefully, that enables you and empowers you. Instagram, we talked about. A couple of interesting things with Instagram. So this is photo and video sharing. Instagram is completely committed to the smartphone as a platform. The web interface to Instagram is horrible. It's lousy. It's just bad software. It's bad software interface. And I don't even think it's like, oh, they don't care so much about the web interface and therefore they didn't put a lot of effort in. I think it was deliberate. I think they really, in a sense, want to cripple the web interface. And part of the reason is because that's where we as parents are going to want to go do our thing. So the entire world of Instagram is pretty much on your phone. If you you literally can't even navigate readily from the web. It's pretty much your phone. You're going to take pictures with that phone, trade pictures with your phone, take video, post stuff. We've got 150 million users on Instagram. A couple of interesting things about Instagram that there's a funky dichotomy that exists with Instagram. One is that, and maybe some of you have heard this if you follow this at all, but Instagram has a policy that allows no nudity or explicit sexual content anywhere at any time, and they strictly enforce it, and they will just flat out cancel your account. They will just take you off. and which I have a tremendous amount of admiration for that. There's a wee bit of hypocrisy that I'll share. They have, on a couple of notable occasions, taken famous stars who posted a nude picture or something that had, something with some kind of pornographic content, and somebody with 1 million followers, and just, sorry, you violated the rules, and just delete their account. 1 million followers, just delete their account. That is some serious courage, I think, from an app perspective. So I love that aspect of Instagram. The hypocrisy is simply that, what does it mean to not allow nudity and sexual content? It means pretty much anything goes up to a very specifically well-articulated geometric boundary, after which your whole account is canceled. But you can get quite a bit of content on Instagram of a Sports Illustrated swimsuit, variety, whatever you want to call that, right? Intense immodesty, softcore porn, if you want to, for some people would consider it that. Others would say, no, I draw my line somewhere else. But you know what I mean? Tremendous amount of immodesty if you're looking for it, and therefore it becomes kind of a feeder, right? So you've got porn stars and nude models and other kinds of folks who've got Instagram accounts as sort of a feeder to their website, to their other sources, right? So on Instagram, of course, they're gonna toe the line, and nothing is gonna cross that line on their Instagram account. And then all over the place is pointers to, for the real stuff, for the rest of it, the rest of the story, go over here to my website or go over here to my, some other account where they don't have those lines drawn. So on the one hand, I have, I think, some of the highest respect that I can muster for an application and a company willing to actually enforce its own guidelines. I think that is tremendous and really deserving of a lot of praise. The flip side of that doesn't make it a safe haven for us and our children to go have our family reunion. So caution is still required. Vine. Vine has become very, very popular. This is it's a mobile app that allows you to make and share videos that last 6 seconds. So a little bit like Twitter for microblogging, 140 characters. Vine, 6 seconds. There are collections of videos. Some of them are just hilarious or they're funny, and people do. They exercise their little directorial skills, their little filmmaking. They do funny, cute things. I've seen at times my kids want to show me these Vines. It's kind of interesting. There is disturbing content. There is pornographic content on Vine. You would imagine that there would be, right? And you're supposed to be 17 to use it. In my experience and in using it and in researching about it, it is not as massive a problem as you would have expected it to be. Does that make sense? Like, yes, you can find it, but not as pervasive as I would have imagined from, first time I went do some research on Vine, let's see what this is all about. I just thought, this is going to be dark, and not as much as I expected. But you can still find it. But one of my surprises really about Vine. Tap Talk, fairly new arrival, so I've not used it yet. I've used almost all of these in one form or another to try to learn about it, and researched about all of them. But so this one basically is internet forums. Again, it's all focused on mobile. There's no monitoring of content as far as I can tell. The content depends on the forums that you subscribe to. So if you're going to subscribe to content forums that have pornographic content, you're going to get pornographic content. But it becomes a little bit more selective in that respect. A little bit like Pinterest, or a little bit like some of these others. I'm not talking about Pinterest here either. I should have probably. Pinterest is more of a web-based thing than an app, but we don't have time for everything. Snapchat. Let's talk about Snapchat. Snapchat was originally dubbed the sexting app. That was its, that was the killer app. That was its big market. I don't know if they were trying to be the sexting app or if it was just something that was obvious that you could do with an application that would allow you to create a video, send it, and have it dissolve in 10 seconds once it had arrived. Of course, people figured out pretty quickly that on iPhones and Android phones, you can do a screen grab of whatever on the screen, right? Most of you, I don't don't know if most of you know that. Some of you know that. This is my wife. I'm going to let her interrupt me.
Doesn't Snapchat notify the sender if you take a screen grab?
Ooh, I don't know. Does it?
And therefore, it becomes a public act if you do that. Or at least it's known.
Okay, that's fantastic. I mean, I don't mean that. I just mean that's from a usability perspective and a software design perspective. That's clever. I respect that at some level. Say louder. There are apps that circumvent the notification of Snapchat? It gets better. Anybody got one to top that? This is fantastic. Thank you. I did not know that. Wow. Fantastic. Yeah. You know what's interesting? I'm just, as long as I've been interrupted by my sweet wife, who can do this anytime she feels like it. One of the interesting things that relates to this idea of anonymity and social interaction online, there was a book called The Transparent Society, written by David Brin, in which he made some interesting observations about why we behave ourselves in public forums, right? Why is it that when you're at a restaurant and you're sitting at a table next to somebody else and they are really worth staring at? Maybe they're very attractive, or maybe they're very unattractive, or maybe there's just something about them that what you really want to do is just gawk, right? Why don't you do that? Kids do it because they have no social structure whatsoever in their minds, right? Why don't we do that when we're in a restaurant? Because other people would know, because they can see us looking at them. That's the big reason. That's why that's a social protection. The simple fact that they can know if you did the screen grab. And then, again, to circumvent that, to create your own ability to privately stalk them and do whatever you're going to do with their content. 71% of Snapchat's users are under 25. There's 100 million users. You know, it's interesting. So it does have this kind of sexting reputation. But, again, the research that I've done, it is less abused than you would imagine. Yes, it gets abused. Absolutely. So again, that has way more to do with who you're interacting with, who the relationships are with, than it does the nature of the app itself. And I think that for the teens, Snapchat has really become a fairly mainstream way of just communicating with each other. And I don't think that the majority of teens view Snapchat as my outlet for sexting. So it's an interesting dichotomy. It's pretty universal. Secret. Here's another one. I don't know much about it, but here's the tagline from Secret, from the app. Share with your friends secretly. Speak freely. That's the tagline. Okay. Again, nothing could possibly go wrong. It's only about a year old. Essentially, the motivation and the goal of Secret is to anonymously share whatever's on your mind. Okay? And let me see. There's followers and relationships and network of people that are going to, that can see. I'm not exactly sure how it's new enough. I haven't used it. So I don't know exactly how it does the distribution. It gets used for cyberbullying. Right? You send it to people and they start to spread it around, and it's in the school, and what you're saying openly and honestly on your mind is how so-and-so is ugly, or so-and-so should go kill themselves, or whatever.
It's location-based.
Location-based. That's right.
Which is another creepy.
Which also gives you the creepiness, that's right. Okay, how are we doing on time? Wait, what time do I have to stop? 45. Okay, good. I'm doing okay. Let me see. Whisper, again, a confessional app. Allows you to share your thoughts. Pretty popular with college kids. Content's user-generated, so you know where that can go. Encourages private messaging and communication. I view it as kind of exhibitionism with anonymity, right? There's certain kids that really want to be seen, and they want an audience, but they also want the protection of anonymity. What's interesting about Whisper, here's to throw you a curve on this one. They have created a system where anybody on Whisper who expresses suicidal thoughts, I don't know if they have people monitoring it or if they do this, automatically with some kind of natural language processing. I don't know. But when they have users that express suicidal thoughts, they actually will intervene and direct them to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is pretty cool. I don't know. It would be, be even better if they said, I noticed that you sent a nude picture of yourself to somebody, and then send them a link to like the Utah Coalition Against Pornography, for example. That would be great. But what's interesting about that little tidbit is that the power, right? The power to do a really positive intervention in certain situations. Okay, I got to get out of here. We got too much going on here. Got to get through these. Yik Yak. It's free. Post messages anonymously. They call them yaks, kind of like tweets on Twitter. Kind of Twitter-like. In Yik Yak, the comments are distributed to the 500 people who use Yik Yak and are within, who are geographically nearest to the person posting. Nothing can possibly go wrong. Cyberbullying problems, of course, in school. You do Yik Yak, right? And you just say, I hate so-and-so, so-and-so, so stuck up, blah, blah, blah. And you're in school, the 500 Yik Yak users closest to you are going to be in the school. So, yeah. There's often explicit content, of course. It'll show the geographic location unless you toggle it off. A lot of pranks and cyberbullying usage on Yik Yak. Oh, and the post can be up or down voted by users. So that's that whole applause versus whatever. Tinder, let's talk about Tinder. This is really very hot among the college kids. Super hot. By way of confessional, I didn't know this until I was working on these slides with my assistant, who is engaged. She's getting married in May. She met her fiance on Tinder. They were both BYU students, or both BYU graduates, but they met on Tinder. So she's like, so there, whatever, what to make of that. What's interesting about Tinder, I'm going to show you a little video clip of one of my favorite comedians, Ryan Hamilton, about Tinder. But essentially, what I don't like about it is just the shallowness, what it sort of leads us to. We're going to make snap decisions in literally a matter of seconds. It's like speed dating, only taken to a ridiculous extreme. It has been used as a hookup site for sex. Essentially, if I'm looking, I put my profile, somebody else puts their profile, I get all these people coming in front of me, and I'm just swiping one way if I like them and swipe the other way if I don't. And anybody that I swipe like and somebody else sees mine and they swipe like, then it's going to create a connection between us. And that, my friends, is what it takes to create a deep, meaningful relationship in 2015, but it does lead to marriage sometimes in the temple, so there. Anyway, it's always a success story. Hinge was pitched as the anti-Tinder, okay? It was an attempt to solve the inherent creepiness problem of online dating. And I got to respect that. Now, here's the deal. Hinge basically goes to your Facebook group and allows you to make connections with the friends of your immediate friends. It's just one step out. So there's a level of social accountability, right? It's also a little creepy still, right? But still, it's not as creepy. And 99%, and the slogan for Hinge is, meet new people through friends, which does have a more wholesome feel. 99% of the users of Hinge have a college education. 90% are between 23 and 36. Any photos are pulled from Facebook. So Facebook has a good reputation, I think well-deserved, as a decently safe place. Builds on that. I like that. OkCupid. Whatever, it's a great bit of branding. Questionnaires, basically. This is 11 years old, weirdly. It's been around for a long time. And it only has a few million users, but essentially you do questionnaires, and the questionnaires help to kind of match. It's kind of traditional dating, really, in a sense. There's some security issues and things like that, but Scout, I like that one. Let's get down to and be honest about what this dating site is really all about. I am scouting out. Let's see. They view themselves as a flirting app. You can flirt with others that are geographically close to you. There are teen and adult categories based on how you register, but there's no way to verify the age, so there's that crossover issue. Adults can send private photos, teens cannot. Adult locations are revealed, teen general geographic region only, and there are some reputation issues with the Scout. I'm moving on here because We got to get through some of these. They're almost done, almost done. Down. Now, down, I'm only going to say this about down. It was formerly, there's no age limit. It's supposed to be adults only, but there's no actual age limit. It was originally launched as an app called Bang with Friends. And I don't think I need to say anything else really about what this one's all about. If you see this one, no. Okay, Grindr. This is essentially targeted at bisexual and gay men. Horrible reputation. I can't imagine. This one, move past those really fast, right? You know what those are. But if you see Grindr, you know that's not a good situation. Hot or Not. This one is incredibly popular with teens. Very, very popular. There are age restrictions, but there's no age verification. Very similar to Tinder, but it's a very similar kind of an idea as Tinder. But you basically tell each other whether you think they're hot. Based on that, if you can link up, you can then message each other. Once you've made that relationship connection there, now you can say, here's my phone number so you can text me or call me. Here's my, you can kick me. It tends to be a launch point to a lot of other social media connectivity, okay? Hot or Not. It is, from a strict content perspective, it doesn't have a massively bad reputation, but it does lead to a lot of shallow relationships. I think for teens, it's incredibly psychologically, emotionally unhealthy in my view. We're almost done with these. Omegle. Omegle is a chat app. Here's its catchphrase. Talk to strangers. I don't know. So what it does, it basically takes two anonymous random strangers, throws them together in a chat room. A little bit like chat roulette, which was really a thing. Pretty common sexual advances, illicit content, not good. Omegle, not good. Meet Me is a social networking app, kind of like Facebook, focused on meeting and interacting with new people rather than old friends. Nudity and pornography are banned, but they're still suggestive and immodest stuff, but that's going to be kind of everywhere. A lot of flirty overtones, not massively problematic. Ask.fm. This one for teens I think is really problematic. Essentially, it's set up in a question and answer format. They ask a bunch of questions and then they can post their answers. They post who they are and all these answers about themselves. What you like, what you love, what you do, all that stuff. Because kids want to be validated. They don't understand that a billion people can also go look at that. That part didn't enter in. They're just sharing to the people that they think are going to look at that and be interacting with them. A lot of problems that can come. Unmonitored content, although you can make reports and stuff. There was an issue in Britain where schools were asked to not use Ask.fm after a suicide, after a cyberbullying incident. So that, it does get used. And the last one of these, 9gag, it's basically dedicated to bad, body humor, really popular with 20-somethings, GIF files, funny captions, memes, videos. A lot of it's inappropriate. They've got option that you can hide the not safe for work content, okay? Here's a couple things, just some things to think about that might be of some help. Questions you can ask about any app, some guidance that maybe equips you a little bit more. What can you send and receive? What can you find and seek? Who can you share it with? These are kind of the functional dynamics. I'm going to move on fairly quickly. I see the camera's coming up, but I'm going to give you 3 more seconds to take pictures of this slide. There's one more just like it, only different words. Okay, here's the other one. What can you control? What is its purpose? And I think this, the 4th bullet, what's the feel? You can learn a lot about the feel of something. What's the emotion? Does it have a meat market feel when you show up? Now, sometimes it's got some problems and it doesn't apparently, immediately feel that way. But sometimes it does. How does it make your child feel? What's their reason for using it? Hot or Not, typically, as for teens, is an intense way to try to seek some sort of external validation. And if they're not getting that at home, maybe they're more readily vulnerable to go get that somewhere else, right? So this brings us to control versus agency. I want to talk about. I haven't actually done this thing on the left, but I have been tempted, right? It's like that old, I always wanted to write the parenting book, right? Agency and how to enforce it, It's like, something's got to shake because these kids it's not panning out, okay? And the thing I really want to just say here, we're down to, I think, 5 minutes. The goal is really you cannot, in the end, control your kid into a positive outcome. You cannot, okay? But it doesn't mean we don't try, and it doesn't mean we don't have influence. But it just means that the goal is, well, I'll talk about the goal. So here's some parenting styles. There's kind of the authoritarian parent, okay? Sorry, the permissive parent. I got these out of order on my slides. The permissive parent, according to Nancy Willard, these are folks with the children have no internalized control to support responsible decision-making because they were never articulated for them. They were never told why they should obey anything, anywhere, for any reason. You don't feel like it, right? And then there's my mom in a military hat. She had that look. Children of authoritarian parents, they lack internalized control also. They both lack internalized control. In this case, because they don't know how to make good decisions, because when they're stuck when no one's telling them what to do, they don't know what to do. Because that's their entire world, it's their entire model. What we're trying to go for is what is sometimes referred to as authoritative parenting, where the goal is basically not, this kid, right? We've all wanted to do that. This kid is going to be just fine on that skateboard now that mom showed up to take care of him. The goal is not to take a 2-year-old in the car seat and then deliver an 18-year-old in a car seat. That's not the goal. The goal is to take the 2-year-old in the car seat, get him to a responsible 16-year-old that can drive. Heck, maybe a young adult that can repair or fix a car. Maybe a college graduate that can actually do automotive. Our goal is evolution. The goal is not to control the 2-year-old until they get to the point where they're 18, and now they've been protected, but they've never done anything. So then suddenly this is the kid, like me, where the first thing that happens when you finally get some autonomy in your life is you go and do everything your parents forbade you to do. Right? I did that. That's when I became active in the church. Okay. There's a backstory there. True story. Let me hit you with a couple of technology guidelines to kind of leave you with a couple of things. These are just the gospel according to Professor Knutson. My opinion, I don't think teenagers should have high-powered computing devices, but they do have to evolve at some level. This is a hard balance, right? When are you evolving? When is it time? That's a really hard one, and I don't have time to go into so much detail, but I just think if you take a 12-year-old and you stick an iPad in their hands, you are just asking for trouble. And I go all the time online. I see people in comments that just go, my kids have been taught, and they're going to make good decisions. Fine, except for the part where then you stumble on something pornographic or even immodest, enough that the chemicals start to flow and the brain starts to shut down, at least the smart parts, and then the limbic system and the dumb parts all get all hyperactive. The best kid in the world with the best parents in the world, given an iPad in their bedroom at night with just the right chemical cocktail in their head, innocent or not, is going to start down a spiral. And they're going to get themselves into trouble. I just think it's horribly, horribly naive to just think that if you teach a kid the correct principle, it's going to all be okay. Because I think every addict in the world of anything already knows that it's stupid. But guess what? That's the nature of addiction. It makes you stupid. So being smart before you're in the funnel when the chemicals are flowing actually doesn't help you that much. It does. You know what I'm trying to say? Okay. Obsessive technology. Be aware, just watch. What's the level of obsession that the kids are engaged in, okay? Ignore the picture of my family from Thanksgiving, if you would, for just a moment, while you ponder. These people are clearly out of line. I did post a picture on Twitter a week or so ago. It was a picture of a bus from the 1950s, and every single person on the bus had a newspaper out. And I had some sarcastic comment about how social media really causes us to isolate ourselves from those around us. And this was the 50s, everyone was on newspapers. Yeah, it always happens. You know how I feel about content filters, I've mentioned. I think that is an absolute must. It is also not sufficient. And I talked a lot about that this morning. Parenting, being online with the kids, I think I talked a little bit about that. discussions with our kids, frank discussions. I've had discussions with some of my kids where I'm just like, you're 13 and I'm not going to let you have a Facebook account right now because your frontal lobes haven't developed and you're brain damaged. And it's just not your fault, sweetie, but one day your brain will develop and then you can have a Facebook account. About the time you can have a driver's license, maybe the state of Utah says they think you can drive a vehicle. There's a reason why. It's because you're brain damaged right now. Couple other things. If you're shocked that you've got a kid who has seen pornography, then you are incredibly out of touch with this generation. I served at BYU for a while in a bishopric, and I did a survey every single semester. Eventually, about 300 young men, the survey was simply statistically every single person in this room has been exposed to pornography and has looked when they shouldn't have looked and known that they shouldn't have and stayed longer than they should have. Okay, statistically, that's 100%. If you're not in that statistical group, will you please come talk to me so I can update my stats? 0 for 300, okay? This is the demographic. Everybody's been through it. The real question is how we're going to deal with that, right? If we're shocked and we react with shame, never thought my child, after all the things, after you've been taught, okay? My line when I have that conversation with my boys is, the first line is, congratulations, you're normal. Because you're supposed to be attracted to that. But let's talk about how we deal with that, because that's obviously not the way we want to go here. There's some deeper discussions that we don't have time for. But it is a normal reaction, and they don't need to be shamed. I think that we, as our families, have got to be fun, happy, engaged, nurturing, validating, loving, affectionate places that are great to be for these kids. I think it reduces some of their draw. And that's really hard, right? As parents sometimes. It's really, really hard to give a rip about what they're caring about right this moment. It's hard. But I do think it's really, really important. And I think it's also true for us as adults. For every one of us, the more we are involved in positive things, the less vulnerable we are to dealing with pornography in our own lives. If we're spending a tremendous amount of time online, glued to a screen, be involved in virtual relationships with virtual scenarios, playing virtual games, raising virtual crops in Farmville, doing all these virtual things, it's not that hard to slip from there into basically virtual sex, right? Everything becomes this weird sort of counterfeit. So are we using that technology as a way to supplement and augment our real lives in a way that blesses us? Because I think that's really, really possible. But when we get into that obsession, then I think we wind up with a bunch of problems. I am out of time. I'm going to leave this slide up for a couple minutes and then switch to another one. Just some signs that you can look at yourself, look at your kids, just a little sanity check for your family. And I'm just going to do that for the next few minutes after I'm now officially done, because we're out of time. But thank you so much for being here today, and enjoy whatever. We got a little more left in the conference and a lot of folks out here with booths and things. So thanks for being here.